As noted here, Terra Tamers Dungym Master is currently in alpha testing, so any of these rules that you read will be subject to changes. To download the Terra Tamers Dungym Master rules for yourself, you can go to patreon.com, Lunar Nebula, and then you can find that I made this post for the rulebooks. Now I've got the simplified version and I've got the normal version, but you can download those just by clicking here, and then that should work for you. Alternatively, of course, I did upload the rules into screentop.gg. So this is just the text though. It doesn't contain any of the graphs or images, so that might be, a little less helpful than you'd be wanting. To play the game, you head to screentop.gg. This should be on the homepage at some point. I don't know how long the review process is. It is currently public, but we just go to play. We're going to do revision V1, and it'll open a new room. You'll take one of these 4 seats, blue, red, green, or yellow, and then the admin, well, that's just for anybody who can want to control components and look around the game and add stuff to the board if needed, etc., etc. For example, let's see, if we wanted more terrain tiles and things, the admin can just pull it onto the board. And then if you wanted to leave the admin role, you would click on this top left area where your icon is, and you could click the leave button. And then it should let you go back to top left, join, and choose a seat. I'm going to stay as the admin for now. Now, if you ever get confused about screentop.gg and its controls, you can always go to its Learn section. So when you go to screentop.gg, this is the home page. Click on Learn, click on Controls and Shortcuts, and you'll see all the various actions that you can do. We'll go over these a little bit more in the video. You can arrive at the Terra Tamers Dungym Master page through the link. I've got it on the Patreon now. I've edited it so that now this link is here. You'll be able to control click that and get to here, or you can go to the screentop.gg Discord and find it in the self-promotion area. But once you get in, you can click play. We're going to play revision V1, and it's going to open up a room. Once again, I'm going to join as admin. Now, once you're in this room, you will want to star if you don't want this room to expire. So if you want to play this with your friends over several sessions, you'll want to click this star. Otherwise, it expires in 2 days. To invite your friends, you'll click this. You can copy this link and just send it to them. As long as they have a web browser, they should be able to play with this link. So here we have the basic overview of Terra Tamers Dungym Master, the simplified version. We'll start at the beginning. A very good place to start. We can use the mouse middle wheel and control to scroll in. And now we can see the Dungym Master's deck. You can pull off the cards and see kind of this game board I made. The cards should anchor to their appropriate place. And what we're going to do is double click with the left mouse button. That'll select this whole deck of the Dungym Masters. I can press F to flip them over. I'm going to click Z to shuffle them. And when I flip it over, it's a new Dungym Master. Now, what's important about this? They are basically the final boss of Terra Tamers Dungym Master. We're, in the simplified version, going to ignore some of these things, such as the green thumb ability. Ignore that. On this card, we have the Dungym Master's name. We have barriers. We have HP dice. We have the brawn, speed, and mind stat dice. And then we also have a Dungym debuff and a terror list. The terror list is for their creatures. So Floor will be using a Gigamouse Ancient, a Florox Ancient, and a Timbear Ancient. So what we'll do is we'll look for Ancient terrors to place on her board, so that from the beginning of the game, you can kind of start figuring out a team to defeat the Dungym Master first. Now I'm going to zoom back out by holding Control and the middle mouse button I'm going to scroll back on. We're going to remove this Ancient Spectralf, and I'm going to go over here to this extra part, because Gigamouse is a starter card. We're going to go to our Ancient Starters over here, and I'm just going to look for the Gigamouse. Let's see. All the way at the bottom, aren't you, Gigamouse? Okay. We'll pull out the Gigamouse and place it over here. So that's our first ancient card. Now we'll go back to this starter section, and we can either pull from the extras, or we can pull terrors from this level 5 or ancient section and pull them into here. Now, if we're pulling them from this deck, this is basically the deck that we can quest for terrors from or get them from the market, versus the extras are kind of just here as extra ones we can use to upgrade or mature the terrors as the game progresses. These are kind of just extra copies if you need them. However, since there's only one copy of each thing in these wild decks, they are essentially removed from the game by putting them in here. So you don't want to potentially get a Florox or Timbear, because they will only be able to be, at most, Elders. Alright, to pull just one card from a deck, we're not going to double click it. If I do that, it'll move the entire deck. I'm just going to left click over here, remove my selection. I'll left click and drag and be able to pull Timbear over to there. And then to put cards back in a deck, we can literally just left click and drag over to the deck. These will automatically flip over as we put them in because of how I've set up these components. Now, if we want to, we can also right click and drag and do that. I haven't noticed too much of a difference with left click and right click at the moment, but we'll see. Before I forget, we should definitely talk about skills and how to equip the Dungym Master with those skills. So, we're going to pull from the highest tier deck of skills. So tier 5, we're going to just pull approximately 9 cards, which is going to be a lot. So we're going to move these around a bit. I'm going to click F to flip these as I pull them out. Okay. So these are going to be the active skills we have. Now, important thing, we cannot use fire with our earth type terror as an active skill. We can use it to mod skills in the future. So what I'm going to do is instead put air up here and fire underneath it. Alright, so now we're going to say Giga Mouse can use Tempest Strike. And in the simplified mode, we're going to be able to add 5 debuff stacks of fire anytime we use this attack on anything that can be debuffed by fire. Fire terrors can't take burn. So, that's how that would work. We're going to move these around then. Let's see. Fire is good there. Alright. Water is still good on earth. Okay, this fire one isn't going to work on earth, so we're going to move that there. Okay. You know what? Let's give the earth move to Giga Mouse. Why not? Why not? Okay. One more. So there's our 9 active skills. Alright. And as you can see, the numbers on the bottom of these 2 cards are matching. That's what we want. We want to have up to 5 of one element to match the top active skill in order to get a mod to be active. So, for example, we could have 5 tier 1 cards underneath this. Alright, since we didn't shuffle that, you can see we've got 5 tier 1 cards, and we could do that. And this is acceptable. Okay, we can't do any more than this. The card can't hold more. Its capacity is 5. So this is also a good way to bank cards that you could spin later on in the game to get more out of the market and things like that. But for now, I'll put these all back in. Alright, but we would continue to draw more of these skill cards and put them underneath here until everything is modded. Now, one thing I found is it's a little bit easier to just put these on top later. So that is one thing that might help you in your setup. But yeah, it's not terribly difficult. This also does bring to mind a question, though. I would love to know what you, who are trying out this alpha test, think of this system. Would it be better for the simplified version to just have one active skill in their mods, and then ignore all these other skills? That might be something that should be done in the simplified version, at least. Please leave a comment. then let me know. So now that we have our Dungym Master team set up, we can then move this entire board around, try to reconfigure things, but we can see these tokens. In general, there's going to be 3 tokens for each player and their team, right? So right here, we see 1 token kind of up here to let you know which terror is which. Right now, the tokens like to go under the board, so I'm kind of just leaving them off the board. We'll do that. And then we can use one of these remaining 2 in the arena when we're actually fighting, and on the turn order board, which is going to look like this. Turn order is going to be dictated first by the maximum speed dice a character has, and if there are ties, they're going to roll against each other to see who has the highest die rolled or highest total, depending on what players choose. And currently in alpha, it's a little bit up in the air, but I do like seeing who rolled the highest die and then just, going down as you use each die roll. So, for example, let's say we're rolling these 5 speed dice on Florox here. Okay, I can select these 5d6 by shift left clicking. Click F, it'll roll all of them. Okay, so the highest rolled would be a 6, second highest would be a 5. So if we rolled against this Florox with, say, something with 6 speed dice, but the highest rolled was a 5 against it, then Florox would go first in the turn order, and that would remain for combat. And at the end of combat, an entire round would pass, and we would click F after selecting this turn order time unit counter, and that would move time units up by 1. Shift F moves it down by 1. After determining turn order a bit, we can use that 3rd icon in this turn order thing. And this basically stays for the rest of battle. If, say, our terror goes down, then we place the next terror right in that same turn order in this simplified version. For the beginning setup, let's return back to this starter section in the pink container. Now, if you ever get tired of these containers moving, you can right-click them and lock, and they will no longer be moving, and we can't drag them around. Of course, if you want to unlock them, same thing, right-click and select Unlock, or the shortcut key L. So at the beginning, we have our Tamers stack right here. I can flip them over, we can shuffle them, and then we can pull them randomly, or because we already know kind of what Dungym Master we're going for, players can choose non-randomly. Now to spread these out faster, we can pull them over to a game board and do that. While they're all selected, it's still pretty easy to move them, so that's pretty nice. And now we've got our various tamers that we can choose from. I have 2 versions of Matt Wong at the moment, because I wasn't sure if people preferred a more realistic art style, and I wasn't sure if the ability Parkour Master would break the game or not. So we'll see with more testing. But for now, yeah, I was thinking we would have each tamer. They have a synergy ability, so if you have 3 fire terrors, this top synergy is active on Matt Wong version 2. And if you have an aquatic, a flying, and a land-based terror, you get this second synergy. Now, you could only have one synergy active, or you could have both of them active at the same time, right? And then their ability will also be active. In Simplified, it may or may not matter, so keep that in mind. Like, we might just ignore these in Simplified. But for now, these are the abilities Tamers have. Now, let's say we've chosen Matt Wong version 2, and we need to then select a starting Rayment. So we've got Matt Wong V2. Here are the starting Rayments. I'm just going to quickly shuffle, and we'll pull that. All right, and now you can see, here's our Rayment. It has our barriers, our HP dice, and our stat dice right here. It has an effect, and it has an equipment slot. In general, you cannot have gear and Rayments with the same equipment slot. So you're going to have at most 4 different equip slots. And as admin, I can go to any of these player containers. We're going to move Matt over here with his Rayment. Okay, And that will work. We can see that this little icon over here is going to be useful. And as admin, I thought I could move this, but maybe I cannot. Interesting. Right, I'm going to rejoin as the seat blue. And now I should be able to move anything in this blue container. Another seat should not be able to interact with this container. So anything placed in here, let's say I accidentally place this die in here. Oh, I can't touch it again. The blue player has to touch it. What I didn't realize is apparently that also applies to the admin, so we'll keep with blue player for now. And so, we've got our tamer area set up. We have a gear skill section. Tamers can have up to 3 gear cards, and once again, they can't normally share the same icon. This one has the program icon, and it is Aid Ally. Spend a barrier and speed die equivalent to tile distance to swap with ally, then take an attack meant for an ally. So with this Aid Ally card, we may or may not use it this way in simplified version, up to you guys as players, but in general, you would use up one of your barriers, and then the number of speed dice equal to the tiles you want to move in here. And there is no diagonal movement, so it's all 1, 2, 3, 4, if you wanted to get here. That's how tile movement would work. And we would place this card under here. There we go. However, we don't start with a gear, so I will take that back and put it back in its pile. Instead, we have a starter card. So as we saw, the Gigamouse Ancient was taken from the starter. There is no wild Gigamouse. These starter cards all have this rainbow starter tag at the bottom. And we're going to choose a child starter. I'm going to shuffle that. Okay, we got Kelpony. All right. So Kelpony is a water type. You can see that from its water symbol right here. This is a child. This is Kelpony. It has 1 brawn stat die, 2 speed stat dice, and 3 mind stat dice. We're going to ignore abilities in the simplified version. We will keep in mind this beast synergy and its stat dice. Its element will come into play during combat. And we'll put Kelpony right here. So this is going to represent Kelpony on the board. We're basically done with setup. Now, if you have any other questions that pop up in the future, you can go to the top right, click this, the question mark, and you can see the Guide 1 for the normal rules, and Simplified for the simplified rules. Another thing you can do is click the number 2 on your keyboard, and this will get you to some of the graphs and charts I've made. I am hoping in the near future to create just a full rule book that people can click through using a counter. I need to find some more tutorials on that, but yeah, for now, we've got a little bit of information here for some of the more impactful things in the game. And status effects, we're going to ignore that in Simplified. But yes, this is the normal game. And so for now, we'll click 1 to go back to our normal surface. So once again, 1 and 2 will control the surfaces of this game for now. Okay, now that we've gone over the rules a bit and where to find them, and the initial setup, we're going to go into the first phase of the game. The first phase is the morning or day phase. I will probably make a little art asset as a flipper for the future, but for now, we think of that as being a visit to the market or questing. In the simplified version, you can do both. So what we're going to do is take 1 card from the gear, 1 card from our current highest Dungym tier, which is Dungym Tier 1. We haven't even run it yet. So we're going to take 1 card of the Rayments here. We'll zoom in so that you can see it. Rayments. Horizontal cards are also, in general, pretty much only for the Tamers. The Terrors are going to have vertical cards. It's another way to think about it. So we'll take 1 Terror, and then we'll take 1 skill card. So that's all of the card decks for now. This Dungym Master layout card is going to be what we actually run when we go into the dungeon before we fight the testers. All right, we're still in the market phase though. So we've got these 4 cards. All right, the page had to reload for some reason. Another thing you can try to do is control F5, and that should force a reload. But right now, we'll zoom back in onto the market. So these are the 4 cards we've got. And depending on the number of players, right now, let's imagine we have 4 players. We would go in order of basically whoever helped prep the game the most first gets to pick first. But in the future, it would be whoever has the fewest time units gets to pick first, and then it will continue in that order. So I'll put that back down. For now, to get the highest advantage at the beginning of the game, I recommend getting a second terror. It's basically like having a second HP bar. So we'll do that. So now we've got Kelpony and Spectralf in our team. So that's going to be pretty good. Okay. Play would continue. People would take a card for now. And then that would end the market phase. Now, one thing to note is if somebody donated their Rayment, we would just exchange the old Rayment for the new one. So I'm going to switch to blue. I'll do that. So yes, any cards that you would just switch in the future, like say we had 3 terrors and we were going to pick a new one, we'd put our old terror that we were getting rid of into the market. So if somebody else could choose that in the future. But for now, we're going to go back to what we had. And then the next phase would be questing. Now questing is where you can try to get something from a deck that is higher tier than the current Dungym. Right now we're at Dungym Tier 1, so we'd be going to green cards, or Dungym Tier 2. So we could go for a higher Rayment, a higher terror would probably be the best thing, and then higher skills. For now, let's say we start questing. So I'm gonna pull this. Oh, it's another. Okay, it's higher tier Spectralf. So it's the teen Spectralf right now. We can zoom in on this just to see it. All right, so because it's a higher tier Spectralf, we basically just put this over our Spectralf. And you can see the difference in stats. So right now, you can see the dice change in value. So it gets harder to deal HP damage. It's also got higher just numbers of maximum dice. So it's got 2 brawn dice instead of 1, 3 speed dice instead of 2, etc., etc. And also, if you ever lose track of, what tier a maturity is, there's a number by this ability that'll help you keep track of that. We are going to ignore these abilities in Simplified, but for now, that is the case. We've also got our little flying icon, and let's see, yep, we've got the land base, so we're almost to one of Tamer Synergies. But we don't have Teen Spectralf yet. We have to fight for it. So what we're going to do is pull this over here. All right. Now, water is weak to air in the elemental advantage chart. Water is weak to air. Air is strong against water. Earth, strong against air. Fire, strong against earth. And then fire is weak to water. And then we've got Matt here. So what we're going to do is see what the highest numbers are on Spectralf. Okay, 3. So we're going to do speed or mind. Okay, and as for Matt here, looks like we're going to want to do mind with our current Rayment. Okay, let's move this container back and lock it. So we'll roll 3 mind dice against 3 mind dice. Now, if I want to, I can put another of my creatures at risk to add another die to this encounter challenge. I think we'll put our Spectralf in danger, because for now, they can't inflict debuffs on each other. Whereas if I used Kelpony, Kelpony could get shocked by an air type, whereas our air type is immune to shock. So that's a far less risky maneuver. All right, let's go ahead and get 4 dice then. Okay, so we're going to roll these 4 dice. Okay, this is our current. Let's see, 6, 4, 3, and 2. Not bad. We'll see what this Spectralf team can do. We'll choose the colorful ones. Roll those. Okay, so right now we're doing the comparison mode, and we already win with the highest die. So we have defeated Spectralf. We don't have to worry about any debuffs. Yay. However, let's say this went the other way. What would that look like? So let's say these dice are now flipped, and Matt and Spectral Child failed to catch the Spectral team. Well, number one, we've already spent 1 time unit to quest. Number 2, if we want to take this card, we have to choose 2 more time units in order to spend that and still get this card. So one of the nice things about questing is you will still get this card, but the time unit penalty will increase if you fail. And that will matter more and more as we go into the game. Because of course, to challenge the Dungym Master, you want to be the fastest person through the dungeon. Okay, other than that, the other penalty would be, we could inflict shock from one of these status tokens. Shock. We've got chill, we've got burn, and we've got poison in the simplified version. And how these work is they decrease the value of the highest die by 1. And then any additional debuff would decrease the next highest die by 1. And these can stack. So we could have up to, currently, 5 of shock. So that would be -5 to the 6 we rolled if we had 5 stacks of shock. Whereas if we had, say, another stack of chill, then that would be -1 to the second die we rolled, or that 4. So yes, this would be 1 value, this would be 3 value if we had debuffs on right now. But we don't, so that's good for us. And because Spectralf is immune to shock, this would not apply on our failure. If we'd use Kelpony, Kelpony would enter the dungeon with shock, which would affect the tester battle. Let's add our newly acquired Spectralf team. Here we go. We're just going to cover up the Spectralf child a little bit, so then we know these are the cards we've got. This is also a good indicator for anybody trying to metagame a little bit, that we will not find a Spectralf child or teen in the wild anymore. So they're not in the terror decks. So if you're trying to find an air type, you're not going to find Spectralf. You would have to go for tier 3, or 4, or 5. And if somebody took a tier 5 Spectralf from here, you would have to mature a Spectralf in order to get it from the extras pile, which is in this pink area. As you can see, we've got Spectralf Ancient Extra over here, and over here. Now that the day phase is over, the market is up, we will go to the night phase, or the Dungym phase. We're going to remove everything but the Tamers token, because we're going to then select these, shuffle them. We're going to then right-click and hold one, and we'll flip it if we're an opposing player. So, the person running the Dungym doesn't get to see this card unless they finish scouting it fully. How scouting works is that difficulty in the top right is the difficulty number of scouting for the next row. So when we first start this dungeon from here in the bottom left, which is where everybody starts, then we'll head towards the top right. But for now, we're starting in the bottom left as the player running the dungeon. Second player will be the player with this card, who will basically know where the obstacles and treasures are on this card, and what that means for the player trying to run the dungeon. Alright, well, Matt has 3 mind dice, so we're going to flip these to roll them. Okay, and we got a total of 8, which is below our difficulty 9, so Matt should have no idea where the traps are. He can see nothing, basically. So, we can go either up or right from this position. We can't go diagonally. We have to move 1 space orthogonally. And that's going to be true in combat as well. And that's based off of our speed dice in combat. But for now, this is just literally in the dungeon, you make 1 move per turn. So let's say we go up. Uh-oh, we hit an encounter. Dun, dun, dun. Now, one unfortunate thing is when this is in your hand, I don't think there's a good way to actually zoom in on it. So what players might want to do is have the dungeon runner zoom in on their arena, and then the player with this in their hand can just play it. We'll release it from the hand on the field somewhere that they can't see it, and then you can zoom in on it. Matt is on an encounter of difficulty 12. That's going to be a brawn check. So it's brawn, speed, and mind. So right now, Matt has, I believe, 1 brawn die, which is not going to be great for him. Let's see. Matt, you've got the 1 brawn die on your Rayment. Okay, so with that in mind, he could put another teammate in jeopardy, but gain another die to roll. Of course, with only 2 d6, it's highly unlikely he'll hit that 12. He needs to meet or exceed the encounter difficulty number, or else. So, well, you know what? Let's say Spectrelf joins him. All right, so we're gonna take these 2 dice, roll them. Ooh, just 1 off. That was pretty close though. Okay, so with that in mind, we then take a penalty, and the penalty on this time is time 1. All right, so for moving, we do 1. For failing, we do another 1. Also for failing, we spend a stat die. So Matt would lose his brawn die here for the remainder of this Dungym run, not for the combat. So we're going to take one of these spent tokens. All right, Matt. So now he's down to 0 brawn dice while running this dungeon. He can still move and do his next turn. Basically, you can always move and do your next turn and everything. We are going to roll again to scout again. And scouting basically will always show you the next row above yourself. So if we get here, we'll be able to scout the entire thing if we're successful. For now, we're not there yet. Boop. Okay, so that is enough. We can see up to here. So Matt would actually see all the traps and stuff. Depending on how you want to play this, you could then reveal the card to Matt, or just wait until he can see the entire card. But now he knows, okay, there's a trap here, but there's a treasure chest over here. How grand. And that treasure is going to be a tier 2 skill, which we can actually equip on our teen Spectrelf. Now, the higher difficulty card here, we actually got kind of unlucky. Does mean we have a better treasure. So that works out for Matt somewhat. Okay, we're going to move and do a time unit. Move and do a time unit. Okay, and now we're going to draw a tier 2 skill. Will Spectrelf be able to use it? That is the question. Da-da-da-da. Okay, it is an earth move, so no, Spectrelf can't. Oh, Spectrelf, you poor soul. Okay, we'll hold on to this though. And we could save it as a mod for the future, but we can't actually equip it on anything. So most likely, in the morning, we'd have to get rid of it, unless we can find a tier 2 skill that Spectrelf can use as an active skill. But for now, we're holding on to it. Okay, and then Matt can avoid these traps pretty easily. Do a time unit, go up here, do a time unit, go up here, do a time unit. Okay, so we're at 10. So we're going to do that for 10. Okay, and now we would enter the tester combat. So testers are different from the Dungym Masters. Their stats scale with the Dungym Tier, which is why it's 1 plus X here, X being the Dungym Tier. So Patty, we need to deal 2 damage here. The barrier actually doesn't even matter. So with 1 terror at Dungym Tier 1, it's going to be a 0 barrier, which means it just doesn't exist. Okay. When we defeat Patty, we can mature a card or upgrade any one of our cards and draw a new gear card. Tamers can hold 3 gear cards at most, and they will need different equipment slot icons in order to keep them. However, remember, if we make extra cards during our dungeon run, we can hold on to them till the end of the morning phase and use them as market material. All right, we also see below that kind of the tier of Dungym that we're at, tier 1. So we're going to draw 1 child terror for Patty to use in this test. All right then. Back to there you go. We draw from here, and it's Apex. All right. What an apex predator. Okay, we're going to ignore the fiery thing. All right. And we didn't have a debuff from the Dungym Master on this card during our run, but we could have. And if it had happened, let's see. Go over here. We would inflict poison from floor. So, if that penalty for failing that strength challenge had happened, with a Dungym Master debuff, we would have taken poison. But we didn't. So we will continue. I'm going to move Matt's Tamer token back to the bottom left, and we will get to choose which of our 2 terrors we pull out first. We're going to choose Spectre Alpha Teen. Seems like a very clear choice, especially since APEC has the elemental advantage against Kelponi. But just to show what that's going to look like, let's pull out Kelponi first. Alright, and then we take our Tester token, put it over here, and over here. Alright, and then we have our turn order. So we had this one up here. I tried to give every player a turn order strip. And then we can figure out where everybody goes. Now every tamer should have 3 of their icons, but I have noticed in this version, I have seen only 2 for some people and then 3 over here. So I wonder if some of the badges ended up beneath some of these boards somehow. At any rate, if that happens to you, you can join as an admin. And we're going to select these. Control C, Control V. Doesn't work, never mind. We're going to go into the chest. And we will pull out the appropriate stuff. So we can get dice, we can get these mats, we can get more terrors, more game boards. But we are looking for those wonderful, wonderful little badges. So I can click here, and we want 1 of each of these. Okay. Yoink. There we go. All right, so we've got extras of these now. And then we will see the speed dice. We've got 3 speed dice on Spectralf, 2 on Matt's Rayment. So Spectralf would be faster than Matt. Kelponi, on the other hand, how fast are you? 2? You're equal. So these guys would roll off 2d6 against each other. And you can do it however you want. You can match highest die against highest die, see who goes first. In this case, it'd be Matt. Or you could do by total. Right now, it's 6 versus 4. Still Matt wins. So we will do that. And then let's check out Patty and her team. How fast are they? APEC is a 2. Patty is also a 2. So everybody's rolling off. That's pretty interesting. Okay, so we have a total of 4 and 6. Because we have so many, I'm just going to do... Okay, you have 7, Patty. And then APEC has 6. Okay. So with that in mind, APEC and Matt would roll against each other. And then Patty would go first. Okay, so actually... Oh, you're kind of slow, Kelponi. Okay. We'll do this for now, though, so that we can see, without going too crazy, where everybody shall go. So is that an E2? That's an E2. Alright, I tried to have E1, E2, E3, and then ET for the Tamer. Alright, we'll just do it like this for now. Let's prepare for combat. We have our Tester token with our Tester's Terror right here. We'll start the Tester and our Tamer in the corners. Our Tamer will return to the bottom left, Tester will be in the top right, and then they can summon their terrors on the sides. In general, I'd recommend like this. Just remember there's no diagonal movement, it's all up and left and right and down. Now, how do we dictate how far people move? By their maximum speed dice. So for now, our Kelponi has 2 max speed dice, and our Rayment has 2. We can remove the spent token from our failed encounter earlier, as we are now in combat. If we had shock, or burn, or poison, anything like that as a debuff, we would keep those. But for now, we're putting our spent tokens back. In the normal mode, there are various abilities and things that will spend tokens. If we'd taken the Aid Ally gear card for Matt earlier, then we could have spent a barrier and a speed dice to try and take an attack for our terror. Stuff like that. For now though, this is our combat arena. We've got our Child Terror with a skill here, except the skill won't work because it's air, and earth is advantageous against air, so we're not going to do that. And then we've got Patty here, and we're going to ignore her fiery ability in this simplified version. She will have, because it's Dungym Tier 1, 2 max dice of all of her stats, and her HP and all that we will keep track of as we go. These will be spent HP dice, and then we've got our debuff tokens over here as well. We have barrier tokens if you want to use them. So for now, she has 0 barrier, but if we need an easier way to keep track of it, we could, move this over here. At the top of the round, we can consider placing terrain tiles based on the terrors we have in our teams. So for now, Matt can place a water tile and an air tile anywhere in here. So we've got 1 air, 1 water, and then APEC is also air. This is a system that is currently under review a little bit, but for now, I'm basically using it as terrain tiles can be spent as long as you are adjacent to them or on top of them. And by doing so, you can add an elemental damage die if you are the same element. If you are not, you can inflict a debuff of that element when spending this terrain tile. Another chance to spend it is, say, if someone was using a water attack and you were on an air tile, since air is strong against water, you could spend this air tile and remove the water die so that it would not work. All of the other stat dice would still function, but you'd remove the elemental damage die, which is pretty powerful defensively. Combat takes place with each unit taking a turn. There are at maximum 4 units on the arena board at any time. You have your Tamers, and you have their 1 terror that they can summon. Once a full turn passes, that is a round. I recommend a round being 1 time unit. And that way, people that pursue longer strategies will be slower through the dungeon. And then also, at the beginning of each round, we can place the terrain tiles however we wish on the board, based once again on the elements of the terrors on each team. So at maximum, there should be 6 terrain tiles placed at the start of any round. Currently, once again, you can only spend terrain tiles if you are adjacent to them, so this one cannot spend this one, air tile, but it can spend this water tile. I'm also thinking, as an example, that we probably can't spend a tile that an opponent is on top of. An ally, I don't see why not. Let me know what you think. Before we dive too deeply though, let's talk about the speed stat. So once again, we can take a look at our maximum speed dice, and that dictates how many tiles we can move on the arena board. So for now, Matt and Kelpony can move up to 2 tiles or spaces on the board at a time. Once again, diagonals are not a thing, so to go diagonally, it would take 2 movement, which is currently what we can do. For now, though, it's time for this other tamer, or tester, Patty, to take her turn. Let's double check Patty's speed. Alright, she's got 2 speed because we're at Dungym Tier 1 plus 1 for 2 max dice. Now, if anything happens where we would spend speed dice, that would affect our movement on the board. However, you can attack from any position on the board, no matter what. The difference being how melee and ranged attacks will roll and what bonuses they get for it. For example, Patty can move 2 spaces, so she can go right over here, just fine. And now, as a tamer, she can use any of her stat dice to do an attack. So we'll use 2d6, and because we are playing the simplified version, the enemy team must attack your terrors before your tamer. So that will come into more and more as we progress through the game. Alright, so Patty will roll She'll get 2 3s. Okay. So, as we've noticed, she is not adjacent to anything. Right now, I have it so that Tamers can attack any range, melee, ranged, whatever. They can crit using any stat. I am debating making it so that you need a Rayment, and maybe highlighting one of the stats for testers and Dungym Masters to be what they can actually crit off of. But for now, this is a great example of a critical hit as well. So matching dice do critical hits. Critical hits gain bonuses. I'll put the chart up now. But 2 matching dice, we get a +1 bonus to each die face. So these are actually +4 +4. If we could turn this into a 3, they all become +5s. So they get +2 each. So the more matching dice you have, the better value that you get out of them. To assign damage, we'll go over here. Alright, so we've got Kelpony's HP dice right here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we have currently 2 3s, or 2 4s because they're critical. We assign damage from top to bottom, meaning it gets more difficult to damage a creature over time as we have to meet or exceed the dice value. So for now, we're going to go back and grab a few of these tokens. Pull a few over here. Alright, so this means Kelpony is missing these 2 top HP dice. Now let's just imagine that Kelpony was already missing these 2 HP dice. With this critical, we would then go down to the 3 and the 4, as this die could cover the 3, and this die with its critical bonus could cover the 4. Alright. And now, we'll imagine that Kelpony was at its final HP. So with this roll, we would need to combine both dice to get rid of that final HP. So they would both be spent in order to access this 5th HP die. Now, if we just roll 1 die for some reason, maybe Patty was spending a die of some sort, and she only had the 3, this would do no damage to Kelpony's 5. So, Kelpony would take no damage. And that is how we spend attack dice to spend HP dice. Once again, you can combine any number of dice in order to overcome an HP die, or a barrier die. We assign to barriers first. So for example, Matt here, because he has 2 terrors, gets 2 barriers of 3 value. In the simplified version, it's just going to be the barriers will show up once, unless you do an action to create a new barrier. If Patty was attacking Matt, she would have taken both of his barriers. This T3 is for if Matt had a 3rd terror. So once again, barriers are like extra HP dice, and they must be destroyed first before you can attack HP dice. Right now, with this roll, once again, Patty could attack the 3 and the 3 here. Because we have 2 terrors on Matt, we would have to attack these 2 barriers and overcome them. Now let's say that this was the roll instead. 3 and 1 wouldn't really matter. We would still only be able to take 1 barrier. This extra die would not be able to overcome the 2nd barrier. To further explain that critical hit that Patty did, let's look at terrors. So let's say Kelpony was a team and was able to equip this Clay Toss. We can see on the card that Clay Toss uses the Mind attribute. So we would be rolling 3 Mind dice. We would be dealing a d6 of element die damage. So we'd find a green d6 for one of the players to use. And then this is a melee ranged attack. So we would only get this critical value if we were attacking somebody adjacent to us with Clay Toss. In the simplified version, we're going to ignore all the extra text on here. We are only paying attention to these icons at the top, the elements, and how many mod stacks there are to determine how many debuffs we deal. So for example, Earth is good against air, if Clay Toss was being used against Spectralf, we would inflict 2 poison debuffs on Spectralf. We'd be able to get those 2 poison debuffs on Spectralf even without a mod. Whereas we could further mod this card with even more Earth, and with 2 more Earth, we would deal 4 poison total for the 2 from Clay Toss and then 2 from the mod. Now once again, we could instead mod this with, say, Air. Spectralf is immune to Shock, or the Air debuff. So that wouldn't really matter here, but it'd be 2 stacks of Air, because we'd need to reach 2. If we only had, say, a 1 from this card, we would not gain any mod bonus from this, but we can bank this card for later underneath this first active skill. So this can be a way to mess with the market and help you collect more cards that you otherwise wouldn't have. Let's continue the combat. It is now Matt's turn. So Matt can move, a total of 2 right now. He can move over his ally. You cannot move over an enemy like that. We can go over here, and we will use our higher attribute dice of Mind 3 for a Mind attack. So we'll grab 3 of these dice. We could use the colors once again to just denote elemental damage, so I won't use those at the moment. I'm going to select these 3, and we're going to target the tester, Patty. And you know what? I'm going to spin this water tile to also inflict Chill on Patty with my attack. I don't get an elemental die because I'm not a water-type terror. Only a terror sharing the same type of the terrain tile will be able to spend it in order to deal an extra die of damage based on their maturity level. Or based on their highest active skill, I guess you could say. So for example, we'd get an extra D4 if APEC had an air attack here. We could get an extra D4 air by spending an air tile instead of inflicting a debuff. There might be a time you want to use a debuff instead of dealing damage. I'm not sure when that time would be. For now, I'm going to flip these. Okay, Matt does a total of 3, 3, and 1, and we can chill Patty so that her highest die now will deal 1 less value. Alright then. So we'll just put that there for now. These are extras. Okay. So 3, 3, and 1. How will we assign these? So for now, Patty starts with 2 HP. So this 1 is basically useless. Great. But we have the 2 3s, and those will take care of her lowest 2 HP dice. Or 2 value HP. So we can just take these from over here. And once again, these unfortunately fall through the deck of cards, so we're going to struggle a wee bit with that. But that's okay. I'll do that. And of course, one thing to note is you can stack these, and that's a very nice way to see the numerical value of, say, these debuff stacks or HP dice that are missing. So I recommend stacking these over doing what I did with Kelpony over here. We'll do that. There you go, Kelpony. Alright, so why did Matt attack Patty first? Well, as soon as we defeat a tester, we win. That is a huge advantage for the simplified version, where at least in the early game, it is easier to go for the tester over the terrors and just go for a straight victory. However, later on, as the testers gain more and more terrors, they will get higher barriers, and of course higher barrier values. And by defeating a terror first, you can basically take away a barrier without attacking the tester. And with elemental advantages and things, well, those numbers can get kinda crazy. Speaking of which, let's say APEC, instead of Dirtquake here, had an air attack. Let's say we had this Squall Lift ability, and we're not gonna mod it for this first tester combat. Future testers will get mods It's not listed in this tester list box due to space constraints, but in the manual, you'll see that as we progress, we also get more and more stuff for the testers. All right, with Squall Lift though, we'll deal a D4 of air element. It is melee range, so we can't crit unless we are directly adjacent. And it uses the mind stat, which is not great for APEC. This poor bird brain. All right then. However, we can still attack with melee attacks from range. It's just, once again, we don't get that critical bonus. So with you, we can move 2. We can get this terrain tile as well. So that's pretty good for APEC. It's a very good placement. I'm not sure I like that. Yeah, this is a D6, so we can't use that. We'll spin the terrain tile underneath APEC to get this second D4 because APEC shares its element. And we'll get a D4 thanks to this active skill. Alright, and then we've got our 1d6 here. We cannot select with shift click the d6 because it is counting as a different item entirely. Okay, well, thank goodness APEC rolled poorly, but we might mess with that. So one thing to remember is we have the elemental advantage. And that means, as the attacker, I can also choose to re-roll any number of my dice one time. So because both of these are terrible, we're going to re-roll them. Wow, okay, well at least we got another 4. So yes, elemental advantage, very good, very good. Disadvantage, the opposite occurs, where the defender can force the attacker to re-roll some of their better dice. Only once, only once. So let's say APEC was attacking an Earth Terror. Well then, that Earth Terror could have forced us to re-roll this 4, which could have been very bad. For now though, we have the advantage, and we will definitely use it. Okay, so we have 1, 4, and 4. I believe that is enough to take out 2 HP dice on Cat Pony. Yes, okay. So we can only take out this 3 and this 4. Highly unfortunate. Even though we could make a 5 with the 1 and the 4, quite simply, we cannot reach it. We still have to spend the dice we would need in order to hit that 5, because we're going from top to bottom. I'm going to double click to take the whole stack. I'm going to drag it over here. Alright, so now we have 4, but we only have 2 selected. Just deselect those, double click, and you'll select the whole stack. Alright, it is now Kelpony's turn. And as we were just talking about, if Kelpony was using a water move, Spectralf could actually, sorry, not Spectralf, APEC could force us to re-roll our attack dice because of the elemental disadvantage from water to air. However, we're going to use this Earth skill and not worry about that. Except this is the wrong skill, that's okay. We'll put that over there. So we're not going to use the skill at all, we're just going to use our stat dice. So we have 1, 2, and 3. We're going to use our 3. We have no critical ability at the moment because we're not using a skill with our Terra. And once again, maybe I'll change the rules for Tamers at some point with critical hits, but for now they can use any attribute and always have a chance to crit from any range. Which, yeah, that's probably something to change in the future. I would like to know what you all think about that. Alright, Kelpony's attack will use 3d6, and we're going to go for the tester. So if we get 3 6s, we're basically good. Ooh. That's just fine, actually. So we can use the 3 for this 3, the 4 for this 4, and the 6 for the 5. And that will win the combat of Dungym Tier 1 for us. Dun 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 dun. So that ends this. So we didn't even do a full round of combat. So we did not have to move this time unit by 1. So we're still at 10 time units. It's only at the end of a full turn order round that we would increase that by 1. So that would be the end of this round. We would then proceed to the next player, right? And what you could do is have 2 players work basically against each other, right? One running the dungeon, another being the tester, holding the card for the dungeon layout, and then actually playing the tester against them. So you could kind of have 2 tables, in a sense, of players. That would speed up the game. However, if you want to just, do it all at once, everybody could take a round simultaneously, and then play could continue like that. There's different ways to do it. Let me know what you like the most. With friends I've played online, it seems like everybody enjoyed being able to kind of take it slower and really soak up the rules as we went. So that is probably my recommendation for the first time you play it, is just, have everybody go kind of clockwise and take turns one at a time. At the end of this tester combat, we can remove this terror from here and the skills. And then we could shuffle this for the next player to go through the dungeon. And then we would select a new dungeon layout card for that person. But the old dungeon layout card we put under our time unit dial for the person that conquered a Dungym Tier. That way we can check, okay, how many Dungym Tiers have we actually conquered? What tier of cards can we draw from the market? Etc., etc. Because the market, we will be able to draw from the highest Dungym Tier finished. So for now, at the end of Tier 1, we would still draw Tier 1 cards. Once we defeat Tier 2, everybody will have access to Tier 2, even if somebody fails. Speaking of which, what happens if you fail? Is there a catch-up mechanism? Why, yes there is, dear viewer. So let's say somebody fails this first Dungym run. Well, they can skip the market and quest phases and do a new Dungym run through the correct tier during that day phase. So they will still take all the time units from that dungeon run, and any debuffs they take during this run, they keep into the night phase. So that's the catch-up mechanism I currently have. Let me know what you think. Does it seem fair? Does it seem crazy? All that. But you track time units the exact same way running through that dungeon, even in the catch-up phase. Those are the basics of Terra Tamers Dungym Master. The game ends when a player with the fewest time units defeats the Dungym Master. Or, you can fight for it at the end with the second fastest player. Which sounds pretty fun to me. Now, one thing to get out of that is that whoever beats the Dungym Master first gets to take one of their terrors and all of its skills. So you can replace a terror that may not be fully equipped with a terror from the final team of the Dungym Master. The rival player, or second player, would then have to overcome the first player with an amped up team. That seems pretty fair to me, in terms of trying to, wrest the championship from somebody else. And it feels kind of appropriate to other video game franchises. So, we'll see what people think of that. But for now, up to you guys of whether the first person to beat Dungym Master with the fewest time units wins versus, just first person versing the second fastest. This game is still under development, as you can tell from my numerous pointing out and requests for comments that, there are some things that might need to change still. But overall, pretty happy with how it's looking in terms of the skeleton of the design, and I would appreciate any thoughts you might have. Once again, you can find me on Patreon. I'm about to start the second book in my series that this is based on. So, if you're interested, feel free to take a look. Have a great day, dear viewer.